Because you don't know what happened. You're on the outside looking in.
We had a date, one date.
Bottom line is you said it's a criminal offense, so I will send it to circuit court. Are we done here?
No, you don't understand, ma'am. You don't understand.
Are we done here? Are we done here?
The Michigan woman in that clip, Quashante Short, sued defendant Richard Jordan for $10,000 for intentionally hurting her feelings for not showing up for a date.
Perjury is
perjury
is a false
I know exactly what perjury means. I know what perjury means. Are we done here?
You don't.
Is it a criminal offense or not?
What statement? I don't see anything in the complaint that says he made some false statement under oath.
Because you don't know what happened. You're on the outside looking in. You don't know anything.
But you're the plaintiff. Wait a minute. You are the plaintiff.
Are we done here?
You have to lay out your allegations properly.
Are we done here?
No, we're not.
Exactly what perjury means.
No, we're not.
You insult my intelligence.
So here to break down this bizarre no-show date lawsuit is Judge Fanon Rucker. Judge, thanks for lending your expertise for this. I'll just come out and say it. Just bizarre lawsuit.
Thanks for having me on. And I certainly co-sign on your assessment of bizarre. I mean, that was absolutely, the lawsuit is crazy. The actions from the plaintiff, the defendants kind of like, see what I was talking about, why I didn't show up for the second date type thing. That whole thing was pretty incredible.
Well, he didn't even show up for the first date. And after watching this video, I think you think he made the right decision by not showing up.
I don't want to disparage anybody, but if he got any indication from maybe a social media post or from talking to other folks, he second thought the decision to show up and spend some time with Miss Short, I believe her name is.
I think he made the right decision by not showing up.
Listen. I'm not going to sit here and go back and forth with you. I will repeat to you what I said.
I'm not either.
I said
that's
that intentional. You need to be quiet while I'm talking. You need to be quiet. Can you mute her, please?
Because perjury is a criminal offense. It has to go to circuit court.
That will not make her hear you.
Intentional infliction of emotional distress.
So overall, Judge, how did you think this judge handled this lawsuit?
I don't think that was a good navigation of our ethical rules and our powers as a judge. As judges, we are required to, and we're trained to, and we're instructed to keep a level of decorum, but also control. And what I saw in this judge was a lack of control. You don't argue with somebody who you know clearly is wrong. There's this old adage. It's actually like an African proverb, but it's a story about why why you should never argue with a donkey. And I could tell the longer story about it another time. But bottom line, if you know that you're right, you don't have to argue with someone who is clearly not correct and doesn't have the authority of the position that they're taking. And as judges, we're supposed to be very sensitive about not doing exactly what I think that judge did in this instance.
Yeah, I thought he did somewhat lose his control, to your point. I think one time he calmly told her that she filed this in the incorrect court.
Well, ma'am, it should not have been filed in district court if you want intentional infliction of emotional distress.
And then a second time he told her, and he really lost his cool. What did you think of that moment?
What I said was intentional infliction of emotional distress is something that circuit court has jurisdiction over. I never characterized that as a criminal matter. It is definitely a civil claim.
That's right. Started yelling. Do you know what perjury is? No. Let me tell you what perjury is. And to actually allow the engagement for her to say, are we done here? Are we done here? While the judge was trying to explain what perjury is. Absolutely not. If that had happened in the confines of my courtroom, and I understand this is on virtual, this is on, a virtual hearing. But if that happened in the confines of my courtroom, and I would argue most other judges' courtrooms, she would have been held in contempt and would not have been able to walk out of the courtroom through the door she walked in. I can tell you that's what would have happened in my courtroom, and I have to believe that most other judges sitting and retired would probably have the same position.
Well, I was wondering that because this lawsuit was so frivolous. Like, part of you, do you think he should have even taken this lawsuit? How does that work with judges if they get something as ridiculous as this?
Well, so that's interesting. At least in the jurisdiction where I've been practicing and where I was sitting as a judge, the clerk's office is required to accept a filing. The clerk's office does not have the discretion to refuse to accept a ridiculous case. It has to be taken, it has to be filed, as long as the filing fee is paid, as long as it's, has some discernible names on there and addresses for it to be served. And then it gets sent out to one of, 30 judges possible that may hear the case. It's up to the judge and the parties to kind of figure out the direction of it. So the judge didn't have a choice but to take it. And it really, I used to dance kind of a line. And even now, when I'm representing people, I kind of, point out some things to the court. The judge has a lot of discretion to make some moves when they think that things are inappropriately being done. But there also is a responsibility on the parties appearing before the court, even if they're unrepresented, to take those steps to deal with their case. In fact, there's case law authority that says even if you are unrepresented, you are deemed to be practicing with the same level of experience as any licensed attorney who's practiced before the court before. And so if that case was frivolous and had no merit, it really was up to the defendant to file or to move to dismiss it as a frivolous case. And then the judge can do what they need to do. But if the judge just looked at every case and made their decision without the parties doing that, it sounds like the judge is advocating for one side or the other. And judges are supposed to be neutral arbiters of the issues coming before us.
Well, speaking of the defendant, Richard Jordan, he gave an explanation for why he was representing himself. What do you think about that?
Mr. Jordan, let me just ask you this. Are you planning to represent yourself on this?
I to be honest with you, sir, I thought this was just going to be thrown out. We had a date, one date, and nothing else after that. And now I'm being sued for $10,000. I don't see how this is going to go any further. I think it's a waste of your time.
I think ultimately he's correct. I think he's just got to put his foot on the gas in order to let the judge know why he's driving through that thing. I think his position, I figured it was just going to be thrown out. This is a meritless case. And, I shouldn't have to be sitting here in the first place. I think he's absolutely correct in his assessment of the legitimacy of this case. But he shouldn't be assuming that the court is on its own going to look at it and say, yeah, you know what, this is pretty ridiculous. Mr. Jordan, I'm with you. We're going to dismiss this. Because there has to be something that he files before they say, I'm with you. If he filed just a minimum motion saying, are you serious? Signed, Mr. Jordan, that may be enough for the court to dismiss it. But he's got to do something. And the court kind of pointed that out to him. I get why he's pro se. And as a judge, I preside over hundreds of thousands of cases. And a lot of those on the civil cases were people who felt like, I don't need a lawyer. I can represent myself. This is ridiculous. They're wrong. I want to tell my side of the story. Or they say, I'm not going to really fight it. I don't have a big long argument. Why should I go get a lawyer and pay them a bunch of money to say what I can say myself?
This is a good legal lesson for Richard Jordan. Richard, if you're watching this, and I hope you are, I did try to track down Richard Jordan. I couldn't find him. It's a very generic name. But Richard, if you're somehow watching this, don't put it in the court's hands next time and assume it's going to get thrown out. You got to lawyer up. And if you get sued for $10,000 for a bad date again, don't just assume that this judge isn't going to take the case.
That's right. That's right. That is great advice for Mr. Jordan, and some advice for Ms. Short. Don't argue with the judge about what perjury is and what legal terms are. And certainly don't do that when you're sitting in the courtroom in front of the judge because it would not turn out with the only thing happening that they turn off your microphone and you're not watching it to know that you're supposed to be back on talking to the judge. And that was another part. That was another part too. The judge clearly has not had a lot of instruction on virtual hearings. And the bailiff, the bailiff was kind of slick to the judge too. Like, you don't understand. Really, the bailiff is talking to the judge like that, telling the judge they don't understand how this stuff works. So that there were roles in from each party in this thing that are kind of like, wow, that's pretty amazing, and there are no boring days in court.
Yeah, did you think the bailiff was being disrespectful to the judge the way she scolded at him for not knowing how to use Zoom?
She's been talking the entire time.
Well, I said I was muted.
Judge, excuse me, you don't understand how this works. Let me explain something to you about Zoom right quick.
Okay.
When I muted her and now I'm asking her to unmute, if she doesn't do something on her end, she's still muted. So right now she's still muted.
Maybe they have a very close relationship. Me and my bailiff are and were very, very close. We're like brothers. But I tell you this, if he ever ranked on me in front of members of the court that were coming to see me, or parties who were standing before there, or even where lawyers were in my chambers, we would have had some maybe on the record, but we certainly would have had some off the record conversation that one of us would not have found very pleasant, and it wouldn't have been me that would have found it unpleasant.
Well, scolded him in a video that's about a lawsuit for $10,000 for a bad date that they had to think was going to get a lot of eyeballs on it. You just can't talk to someone like that, especially in public.
That's right. That's absolutely correct.
What'd you think when Miss Short and the judge were screaming at each other and Richard Jordan just puts his head in his hand?
Are we done here?
No,
I
we're
know
not.
exactly what perjury means.
No, we're
Do
not.
not insult my intelligence.
You have to
Please do not insult my
you
intelligence.
have to lay your you have to lay your
Please do
you
not
have to
insult my
lay
intelligence.
your complaint out.
I think he was being intentionally demonstrative with his, kind of like, you see what I'm saying? You see what? Oh my God, really? Oh, I mean, this is Judge for real. I mean, he didn't say that, but you could just see in his face that's what he was kind of feeling. But it really kind of gave meat to what we're observing and what we're all thinking. Like, we know what the topic and the issue is here, and every bit of his position was justified by what we saw of her behavior to the judge in that clip.
It really was the viewers' reactions. Like, I'm watching it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just so insane. Could she be in legal trouble for wasting the court's time with such a frivolous lawsuit?
In 1987, maybe 90, somebody sued a large fast food company for $15 million for a hot cup of coffee, and they actually won the judgment. They did they won millions of dollars for some hot coffee spilled in their lap. In the initiating of that case, I'm sure many people said that is frivolous and that is ridiculous, and I'm sure during the course of litigation that was raised. So could she get in trouble if she can piece together the overall allegations to substantiate her claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress? Then it's hard to establish that it's frivolous. Can she prove that? Does that meet the legal standard? Absolutely not. I don't believe so. It certainly sounds outrageous, where she's arguing that because she didn't like the answers that he gave in his answer, that somehow she can sue him for perjury. Well, that's absolutely ridiculous, because perjury is not a personal civil offense. It's a crime. And it doesn't apply to what you put in a pleading. So just in everything about how she's engaging, maybe there's some part of sympathy that would justify some amount of recovery for something that he didn't do. Maybe he told her to go out and buy a dress for this big day. Maybe he had her buy tickets. And so maybe there's actually promissory estoppel that comes, or that he was somehow unjustly enriched by something that she did leading to that date. Maybe there's something within the facts somewhere in there that justifies some sort of claim, but not from what we heard. And so, no, I don't necessarily think she can get in legal trouble unless she made this whole thing up, and they never even met. And it's she was just filing it to be defamatory. In that case, she could.
Yeah.
But if she can piece
Yeah.
together some claims, who knows?
Now, Richard said they met. He said it was one date. Thought the whole thing was getting thrown out. I don't know if she wants to go back to court after that experience too. Do you think Richard Jordan should turn the tables on her and sue her for emotional distress from this video going viral and what he had to deal with?
Would that the court allow such things? I would say yes. However, claims are not allowed to be made from proceedings in court. I get people calling me now wanting to sue people who are suing them. I had people appearing in front of me saying, well, I want to file a countersuit because he got me taking off work, coming down here to defend against this stuff, so I'm missing my coins. I mean, I would get people saying that kind of stuff. So you cannot sue people because they take you to court, even if it's ridiculous. What you can do, however, you can move to dismiss it. And if it is contrary to law, you can ask for sanctions. And sanctions can be a monetary penalty that you get paid for the wrongfulness of somebody in a court filing or court action. So it wouldn't necessarily be a lawsuit, but in his request to have this dismissed because it is outrageous and stupid and not consistent with law, and Judge, on top of that, I'm asking for sanctions because I had to waste my time getting off work, defending this thing, and that would be how he would recover some type of monetary award for her frivolous action if that was deemed by the court to be so.
Goes from getting sued for $10,000 to maybe making some money. I don't know. Could make up for the experience. Worth noting, Judge, believe it or not, the lawsuit did in fact get thrown out from district court.
Shocking.
Shocking indeed. Judge Fanon Rucker, thanks so much for coming on Law and Crime After Hours. Great having you on.
Thank you. Good to see you.